Is this anti-trad wife, feminist revolution, and the battle of the sexes that's spreading around the globe right now really necessary? I mean, women have rights. It's not like it's 1830, right? That right there was a quote, as close as I could get to it anyway, of a real life conversation that I had with a conservative Christian male friend of mine a few weeks back. And the answer to the question, do we need this current feminist revolution in the battle of the sexes, is absolutely yes. My name is Jenny Gage. This is Life Take Two, and I'd love to dive into this. I'm going to start this conversation with a story that's very likely going to cost me a couple friends if they happen to ever be on YouTube and see this video. But here we go anyway, because I think it's really important. Last year, we had a new family move into a home in our cul-de-sac, and my son was friends with their son right from the get-go. And one night they invited us over to dinner. They have a beautiful home, beautiful family. They are beautiful people. This was the very first time that Kevin and I were getting to know them. And so we went over one evening and they had amazing wine and hors d'oeuvres and everything was just lovely. And then we sat down at the table to eat, and the conversation automatically went to, what do you do for work? For almost an hour, we all dialogued about what Kevin and the husband did for work. And we spent a long time with him telling us his whole entire career history. And then he asked Kevin, what do you do for work? Kevin talked at length about his school and his whole entire career in education, why he had felt like that was his passion, how he feels so much satisfaction from making an impact on the lives of future generations. Both husbands and both wives dialogued in depth about Kevin's career. After an hour-long conversation about what do you do for work, when both men had exhausted every detail about their entire career trajectory, the conversation ended. We turned to other things entirely. Not one single person at that table asked, Jenny, what do you do for work? Or let's just call her Susie. Susie, what do you do for work? In the middle of this conversational shift, I felt robbed. I felt invisible, and I very much felt this gender war that the men don't think is happening at all. I knew that both myself and the wife, just from the little bit that I had heard from Brody talking about her, had career. It really pissed me off that neither of these men cared to ask what we did all day. So I just jumped right in with, well, let me tell you a little bit about what I do for work before we move on to all of these other things. So I shared with them my windshield company that I had started with my ex-husband as a 20-year-old girl, how I got booted out of any type of ownership years back, but continued to work for and grow this company for 30 plus years. I told them about my current role in the organization and shared a story with them about one of my customers that had called that afternoon. She was this hilarious Jeep driving lesbian grandma, and how funny she had been on the phone, and how she told me she wanted to meet me in real life because the customer service had been so top notch, and how much I enjoyed that aspect of my job, interacting with my customers. I then shared a little bit about my international domestic violence advocacy and some of the groups I work with to help women and children get out of abusive situations, my Man Proof Your Life program, and how that helps women, and some of the hundreds and hundreds of articles and interviews and documentaries and podcasts and other films that have been written about me, and my own social media platforms and podcasts and Substack and other articles that I have published around the world, and the 8 to 10 million people a month that I reach as I try to change the world for women. Super brief. I tried to wrap this all up into like 3, 4, 5 minutes. While Kevin made a couple of comments, the husband didn't ask me anything. He was just eating his food and interesting. That's interesting. It seemed utterly uninteresting to him. He seemed so bored, didn't ask me a single question. And that was that. And when I got done sharing a little bit about what I did for work, then I turned to the wife and I said, what do you do? I've heard a little bit from Brody, but tell me about your job. Kind of funny that she acted shocked. Like, does somebody want to know about my job? And she just kind of poo-pooed it like, oh, it's not even that exciting. Here's what I do. And she works for little organization that seems absolutely amazing and exciting. I doubt that she spent 30 seconds talking about her job at all, despite the questions that I was asking. And again, the men are just sitting there at the table, blank faced, like, we don't care. And they don't. They truly do not view us as equals out there in the job world at all. Now, even though I was a mom and stay-at-home mom, I was still doing things for our windshield business for most of our marriage. I just didn't get paid for it. And it was kind of like whenever my husband needed me to do something, he needed like somebody with a cute smile on the face who would just be soft and sweet. So he'd send me out to a Chamber of Commerce meeting or send me out to see these customers or whatever. I never had a paycheck, but I was still out there in the business world for years in a limited capacity. And I remember one Chamber of Commerce mixer that I went to at Christmas time representing our company. And I remember a man asking me, is this your dad's business or your husband's business? And it hadn't been. I started the business. I ran the business. I managed a lot of the business, but I wasn't getting paid for it. So I was like, yeah, it's my husband's business. He just sends me out when he wants somebody to do a good job socializing. And honestly, I wasn't offended by that conversation because I was Mormon. And so, like, of course, it's my husband's business. Why would I have a business? Girls shouldn't have it. Or another time more recently, when I was very much discriminated against by two men, where Kevin was with me and saw the discrimination. And boy, I'll tell you, he was about to crawl out of his skin because he felt so slighted by it that he talked about it for days. I'm trying to get a custom home building company going again. I have some investors. We were purchasing a piece of property from a man. His only role was to sell us the property. He had no say in the design or anything. I'm doing the design. I'm doing everything. I have all of the funding. I'm doing the listing. It's all mine. It's my LLC where I'm going to build custom homes. And I have a family member who's an architect. And we had to meet one night to walk the property with this man. So the architect and the project manager, the one with all of the funding, the person in charge of everything, meet at the property with the man who's just selling us the property. Everybody's men except for me. The minute we all meet on this property, the boys start shaking hands. Nobody shakes my hand. Not one person shakes my hand. The boys start introducing themselves to one another. And then while I'm standing here at the perimeter of the property, pulling out the plat map, they all walk off together and they start discussing design and home orientation and budget and all of this stuff that has absolutely nothing to do with really either one of them and has 100% to do with me. Property owner eventually invites us into their house where the boys all sit there and talk. And I'm literally just this silent little person at the table. If I had gotten up, walked out the door, and disappeared, nobody would have cared. So this current feminist revolution is about a bunch of things, but here's one very important one. Until the day that when I meet a man, he asks me what I do and doesn't just assume that I'm home folding my husband's laundry, vacuuming the floors. And when I tell him what I do, engages in conversation and respects it, until that day happens for all of us, this ain't over. Until the History Channel has an entire docu-series on the women who built America, until my high school son's history books have the founding mothers and not just some lady who sewed a flag, till I can stand at a job site and have all of the men turn to me and say, this is your project, Jenny. What direction are we going in? Until then, this is not over.